In 1983, Nikon introduced the most advanced manual focus 35mm SLR ever made, the Nikon FA. This is it, the Nikon FA. Let's start with the top plate. On the top right hand corner, if you've got the wind on lever here, and there's the shutter release, nice and smooth. On Nikons, if you leave the lever in like that, that's the shutter lock, so you have to pull it out like this in order to fire the shutter. Just here you've got a shutter speed dial that goes all the way up to a 4,000th of a second. You've got flash sync at a 2/50th, and you've got a mechanical shutter speed there in case your batteries run out. And in order to set it to that, you need to press this button on the back if you want to access either the mechanical 2/50th of a second or B for bulb. You've got all the modes here. Manual, aperture priority, shutter priority and program on this button, which is a little bit fiddly compared to modern cameras for changing the mode. On the left top plate we've got the ISO dial here. This is again a bit fiddly. You have to lift it up in order to change the ISO. Just lift it up and spin it round like that. To engage the exposure compensation, you press this button in and then you can move the exposure compensation in third of a stop steps. Opening the camera back is just slightly more complicated than most 35mm cameras. You have to push in this little catch here, just push it forward, and then you can lift up that, and that allows you to pull and open the camera back. On the front of the camera here, you can see there's the self timer, which you can just pull that down, push the shutter, and you've got time to get yourself in the picture if you want to take some pictures of yourself. Over here is the depth of field preview, so you can close the aperture down to see the depth of field for the photograph that you're taking. Just here is the lens release button. You push in and you can see the Nikon bayonet mount. This connection here is for plugging in the dedicated Nikon flash, which allows through the lens light metering. On the bottom of the camera, here is the connection for the MD15 motor drive, which advances the film at 3.2 frames per second. There's another cover here that you have to remove in order to fit the motor drive. This is the cover for the battery chamber. There's the tripod socket. That's the rewind button. When you finish the film, you press that, and that allows you to rewind the film back into the cassette. This button allows you to change between center weighted and evaluative light metering for the light meter. The Nikon FA introduced a radical new way of getting the exposure right. Early through the lens metering involved taking an average reading across the whole of the scene, shown here in blue. However, if the subject and background were lit differently, for instance having a bright background, the meter would be confused. In this example, the photo would be underexposed. To fix this, centre-weighted metering was introduced. Most of the light reading would be taken from the centre, the lighter blue area, and less notice would be taken of the rest of the scene, which is darker blue here. If the subject was in the centre, then the reading would be quite accurate. But if the subject was not in the centre of the frame, then the exposure would still be wrong. Evaluative metering involves dividing the picture area into segments. Readings are then taken from each of these areas. Their relative brightness can be used to determine which segments should be used for the correct exposure measurement. So Nikon had solved the automatic exposure problem. The Nikon FA introduced a radical new way to guarantee correct exposure, which is now used by all modern DSLR and mirrorless cameras. It's a professional grade machine that is Nikon's most advanced manual focus camera.